Hello and welcome to the Home Assistant Podcast. This is episode 42, and today we're going to be talking about 0.86 and getting to know Lovelace with Zack. And joining me as usual, we've got Phil. Hey, Phil.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Awesome. This episode is sponsored by Home Assistant Cloud by Nabu Casa. Easily connect to Google and Amazon voice assistants for a small monthly fee that also supports the Home Assistant project. Configurations via the user interface, so there's no fiddling with router settings, dynamic DNS, or any YAML.
So Lovelace is finally here, and a bit later on we'll have Zack to talk all about that. But before we get into that, I think I don't really want to make this a theme for the podcast this year, but Rohan, do you think we need to talk about Nest?
Yeah. This is becoming a bit of a whiny kind of thing, but I think it warrants being called out. So something that we noticed on Twitter, as you know, exactly where everybody gets their reliable news. But we did notice that Nest is not accepting any new developer accounts. If you're familiar with the ecosystem, it's a smart smoke detector, which I actually personally use. And they have thermostats and so on and so forth, cameras and such. They're not accepting any developer applications, which basically means that users can't get access to the API. So a lot of products or a lot of projects use the APIs, like Home Assistant, which needs their API keys to, do things like make calls to your thermostat or make calls from your smoke detectors and such. So this, might be a bit of a problem for some people.
So Home Assistant actually tweeted about this from their Twitter account saying, hey, what's up, Nest? Is this true? And they actually had a response saying that they're currently restructuring their developer program and they're no longer accepting new developers to the program or performing any reviews and certifications, yada, 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 which I think we all know is corporate jargon for we're probably going to get rid of this in the future. So yeah, stop. Just don't do it. Yeah.
So it's I'm hoping that that's not the case, right? Like a part of me, every part of me wants to say like, hey, that's it. They want to get rid of it or whatever. But a big part of me is like, well, I'm really hoping this actually is hey, let's restructure our developer access and our APIs and things like that. And I don't know why they would want to remove it, especially so Nest was bought by Google, right, in 2014. They paid, $3.2 billion for it. So I can kind of see a company doing this, but at the same time, I feel like Google would do better. So a part of me is hopeful, but again, every other part of me is like, yeah, okay, do I just come to terms with the reality, right? And
well, so you say Google would do better, but the cynic in me says this is what Google does. I'm still using Google Inbox right now, and I have 2 months to move back to Gmail because Google's shutting down Inbox. Everyone remembers, Google is famous for just killing off things. And it's one of the reasons I have tried to avoid getting a Google Home because I just don't trust that Google will commit to the product.
Yeah. Well, they just killed the Chromecast audio as well.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah, exactly right. Chromecast audio, which is very popular with home automation users because it's a great way to get text-to-speech around your house, is now there's another product that's just gone. So being an Alphabet/Google company, maybe this is Nest either going to come out with a new API which their current products won't support. This is just the cynic in me saying, is this how it's going to work? And, forcing users, you Rohan, just said you've got a Nest thermostat. So does that mean that if Nest do change their API that you'll need to go out and buy a new thermostat to work with that API? So then you can get, like third parties like Home Assistant and other platforms to be able to control your thermostat because it needs that new version. It's a bit
Yeah, it's a tough one, right? Like, well, for it's funny because for me, I actually have an Ecobee thermostat, right? But I use Nest for
Yes.
for the smoke detectors and such,
Yep.
but which has kind of always been that like, that forgotten thing from Nest, right? Because anybody talks about Nest, they go, "Oh, the thermostat? No, not the thermostat. Oh, the cameras? No, not the cameras. They have other things." Right. And so, I mean, my experience with Nest has always been that anyways, personally, yeah, it's, I don't know. It's a tough one because now, last episode we talked about, over the holidays, Logitech, and what they did. And, it turns out that they ended up doing the right thing, whether for better or for worse, or, say what you want about it or have whatever opinion you want about it. But, this, I don't know. I just got really frustrated when I saw that tweet from Home Assistant, because I'm like, man, this can't, why is this happening again? It's been 2 weeks, or whatever, a month or whatever it is. And, is this the next thing? And, this is how I'm starting off my year. So is this going to be the theme for 2019 for home automation, right? Is,
like,
hey,
what's next? Right?
Yeah, this cloud hosted service now cans their thing. And again, a lot of people have very strong opinions about, hey, I'm not going to go with a cloud hosted service for this exact reason. And, can you blame them? Probably not for this thing. Like, I mean, there's a whole like, hey, privacy and all that stuff with, I mean, Google's fighting their own fires for that, but but this is also the case, right? So, and personally, this is part of the reason why I tried to move away from smart things and on a Home Assistant. And, that was a couple of years ago now, but that's one of the big motivations for me, right?
And that's, I don't want to have to keep doing this. It just gets frustrating, but
yeah, this isn't meant to be a depressing podcast, ladies and gentlemen. It's
right, we try to be happy. So, but if there's a bit of a silver lining, Reddit user Chief, spelt with a 3, 117 on Reddit, says that you can still register for a developer account with Nest. It seems they've got a notice, like just a message up on their website that they're not accepting applications, but apparently the registration form still works. So if you have just got yourself a Nest product and you need to go and register a developer account to integrate it with Home Assistant, don't be too afraid. Just try and register that account first. See if they are still accepting it, even though they're not saying they're accepting it.
Yeah, and if that's the case, do it now before they shut it down.
Yes,
like actually shut it down. So,
did you register a developer account to get your smoke detectors? With
the honest answer is I actually don't remember. It was so long ago. This is when I moved into my house. That was actually one of the first things that I got, because I was traveling a lot at the time, and I was living alone. So at the time as well. So I wanted from a security perspective, like, hey, if something's going on at home, at least, I'll get an alert, and, at least even nothing, like if I'm in the US or something, I can call 911 and say, hey, listen, I'm from, Toronto, Canada. My house is on fire or whatever. Right. Like, I mean, I always prayed that I never had to use those smoke detectors, but, and my house has, ceilings that are a touch higher, and to the point where it's just inconvenient enough that I can't reach my smoke detector with a chair. So the Nest has a great remote silence function right through their app. So it's been so long. So I honestly, I think I probably did it, but I don't remember. I don't know.
Well, if it ever stops randomly working one day soon, you know
why. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But onto some happier news, and yes. I think when we were talking about Logitech in the last episode, we also mentioned how Philips Hue were pretty good, how they responded during that whole fiasco. And something I noticed over the December break was that Philips Hue have added a new feature to their smart bulbs, which I think is worthy of just a mention here for anyone that does own a Philips Hue and doesn't know about this. So owners of a Philips Hue smart bulb can now have the ability to customize what happens when power is restored to a light bulb.
Ah, perfect. So that means if you lose power, it's not going to come out 100%, full, whatever, when the power comes back on.
which has been a lot of people that a bit of a negative side to Philips Hue that always mention, if the power goes out at 3 a.m., your lights are going to come on at 100% brightness as soon as the power comes back, which is true. And Philips have finally addressed that, and now you can either choose to have the light bulb just stay off, or you can have it come on a certain color at a certain brightness or whatever. The only downside of it is that you can't have it remember its previous state. So if the light was on purple and you lose power, it will turn on and it will then go to that default setting that you set. It won't remember its previous state.
Right. Hopefully that's something in a future generation of Philips Hue bulbs that they can, have some kind of logic to, have a capacitor or something in there to say, hey, you know what? Hold a little bit of extra power so I can dump, color and brightness or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because once it loses power, it'll have no ability to save it somewhere. Yeah,
exactly. And then just a little bit. But yeah, so that's awesome. So and from what it sounds like, if you use ZigBee to MQTT, you can also take advantage of that. So that's which is fantastic. And then we'll leave a link in the show notes for where to look for that information.
All right, 0.86.
Yeah, so 086. So this is interesting. So there's a couple of new features. There's one massive new feature, which we'll talk about afterwards with Zack. Yeah, so let's get right into it. So there's a new ZigBee control panel. So if you're using the ZigBee home automation component, you can get this new panel. And basically with that, you can do things like add new entities, cluster commands, so on and so forth. So that's kind of nice.
Yeah, that's good for anyone that's using their own ZigBee radio plugged in. I think there's in the US, there's a popular one that has a Z-Wave and a ZigBee chip on the one USB.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you're using that, you will really appreciate this control panel.
Yeah, exactly. So that'll be kind of cool.
HomeKit's got a bit of love in this release, and the first one is the HomeKit alarm panel support. So HomeKit security system, so if you have a security system that integrates with Apple's HomeKit, it will now appear as an alarm control panel in Home Assistant.
Very cool. And similarly, locks and covers. You can now control a lot of the HomeKit connected locks and covers for things like curtains, garage doors, and such in Home Assistant as well. So some breaking changes as well.
So there's big changes to the time triggers for automations. So this one's probably going to affect a lot of users. It's definitely going to affect me. To better support the time triggers in the front-end automation editor, the time triggers for automations are going to be changing very slightly. So if you wanted to trigger an automation, say, every 10 minutes, you would specify the platform as time, and then you would set your have an at minutes/10 for every 10 minutes. From 0.86, you will now need to move those sort of automations where you want things to happen like every X minutes, every X hours, to a new platform called time_pattern. And then you'll need to do things for every 10 minutes. You would now have the time_pattern as a platform, and then specify the pattern, which would be minutes 10.
Right.
There's obviously going to be code samples and all that on the blog post, but you will need to go through. Just make sure you update all your automations. When you restart, it may not work if you're using the platform time still.
Yeah. So also, locative and GPS logger are now separate components. So they've been upgraded. The components themselves have been upgraded to use webhooks. So if you use those, you'll find that there are some changes. So have a look at the actual Home Assistant website for how to do that.
And if you're using a Roku media player, which I am, the Roku component has had a few enhancements done to it. So the first one is it's actually its own component now. It used to be part of the media player platform where you would have to specify media player and then platform Roku. You can now set it up using just setting it up as its own component, so Roku. And when you do that, it will automatically add the applicable media player that you already had previously. And it's also going to add the new Roku remote ability, which is basically very similar to how a Logitech Harmony remote would work. You can now have Home Assistant press buttons on your Roku. I think there's a few limited buttons like up, down, volume, mute, and all that. There's a full list in the new Roku component page, but that's a really cool addition.
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually accidentally found this. So I was playing around with Home Assistant, and I didn't realize they were using the Roku remote component already. And so, because at some point I realized, hey, my Roku's not on, not on anything. And I got a Roku stick, like I don't even remember, not that long ago, probably about, I think it was like Black Friday time or something like that. And
yeah,
I was like, I forgot I could do that. So yeah.
So one idea I'm really excited for is currently I have the Amazon Echo. When the timer goes off, it will send a webhook through the Home Assistant cloud to Home Assistant to say, hey, the timer's just completed, and then Home Assistant will flash some lights around the house. I also have a rule that if the Roku is set, has the Plex app open, and the Plex player is playing, it will then just pause that on Plex. Now, the problem is, so that means once the timer goes off, the TV automatically pauses. Now, the problem with that is it only works for Plex because it can only send the pause command to Plex.
Right.
But with this new remote component, I'll now have the ability to pause whatever's on Roku.
Right. Netflix or Amazon,
exactly,
whatever, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So this is going to be a great little enhancement.
Oh, that's true. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I never even thought of that. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, and we just got a Ring doorbell at home too, so now I can have when the doorbell gets dinged, press the pause button on the Roku.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah. Because you have the ding. It's literally called ding. The last ding
I think
or whatever.
Exactly. It's a binary sensor in Home Assistant, and as soon as that goes to on, someone's at your front door.
Yeah, that's cool. Also, there's now support for multiple Favero gateways. So what that means is you basically have to specify a list of gateways, even if you only have one. So a little bit of progress there, but again, it is a break and change.
If you are using the OpenUV sensor to get UV reports, from February 1st, OpenUV will reduce the number of API calls you can make to just 50 per day. And that's if you're on their free tier. So because of that, Home Assistant's made a few changes to the OpenUV component, and a new service has been added to Home Assistant called OpenUV update_data, which you must call to fetch new data from OpenUV. So that means OpenUV won't automatically update unless Home Assistant is restarted. That will mean you'll have to create an automation to call the OpenUV update data service, and then you can choose how frequent you want that data to update. Maybe you want it to update once every hour, maybe twice an hour, whatever works for you. This way, if OpenUV decide, 50 is too much, we're going to cut it down to 25, you have the ability to customize that in your automations.
Right. Some other noteworthy updates. So if you have MQTT vacuums, they're now actually supported on auto discovery. So that's actually very cool.
Yeah.
I don't have one, but now I kind of wish I did.
And Thomas Loven has actually done a great little feature, especially for Lovelace. You can now specify icons that aren't just from material design icons. So if you're familiar with Home Assistant, you can use a whole bunch of icons from material design icons. And now, thanks to this little pull request, Home Assistant can now have custom icon fonts. And the first one Thomas has brought out is the very popular Font Awesome. So if you want to use Font Awesome icons in your Lovelace front end, now you can. So yeah, great feature there.
That's awesome. Yeah. IKEA attach-free lights will now be marked as unavailable when there's any communication errors. So if there's any problems, so on and so forth, it'll just flag it as it's unavailable, which hopefully catches your attention and you can fix it.
Yeah. And if you are using the fail to ban sensor, that now supports IPv6 addresses as well.
And if you use Arlo, the Arlo alarm panel can now be set to night mode. So that's kind of interesting.
I've seen a couple of people requesting that, so that's good to see.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the big change in this release. Lovelace is here, and it's here to stay. So
Yes.
it's interesting because we've actually had to delay this part a couple of times.
That's right. We're originally going to. We originally had Zack come out early December. It was ready to go. Lovelace is here. We're going default, and then at the last minute, there's like, oh, we're going on break for a couple of weeks, so let's just hold off the release here. So yeah, hey Zack, how's it going?
Hey guys.
Today we're going to play the chat we had with Zack back in December. Just keep in mind that there might be a couple of things and breaking changes that we're going to talk about, like the title and name. They've already happened. Those breaking changes happened back in 0.84.
Mm-hmm.
From 0.86, Lovelace is now the default UI for Home Assistant. And if you haven't used Home Assistant previously, Home Assistant is now automatically going to create an interface for you. So, Zack, for a user who hasn't used Lovelace yet, what does that mean?
So if you haven't touched Lovelace at all, and that means you haven't created your UI-lovelace.yaml, then Home Assistant is going to automatically create your Lovelace UI just as the old States version did. So it'll use our Lovelace cards that are integrated, and if you have let's say a thermostat, then it's automatically going to add the thermostat card and put everything there for you. So this means that you don't have to go through the pain of setting everything up. It's kind of all there, and then you can edit it straight on that screen. So you can edit the one that we create for you, which makes it really nice because you don't have to go through all the pain of adding all your entities in and seeing what you have. It's just kind of always there. So I do believe that new users are really going to love that feature.
If a user is using Lovelace right now and they've got a UI Lovelace YAML file, there's been a lot of changes to the configuration options across all the cards, basically. Is this going to affect a lot of existing users?
Yeah, it's going to hit a lot of people. I made a lot of changes that they'll make people mad, but they're kind of what we needed to go. We needed to go there a long time ago, but going out with Lovelace as default, I kind of wanted to get that done. The aspect ratio on the map card is going to change. It's going to conform to the other picture cards that we had that were both different, and there's no need to have two different ways to do something. So we converted that one to be the same overall. So for the alarm card, we used to have the title variable. Now it's the name variable because it's one entity.
Right.
That goes for the gauge card, the sensor card, and all those. Every card that has only one entity is going to have a name. Everything that has more than one, let's say the glance, the entities, they'll have a title. So that conforming all the cards to be that kind of is going to help new users, especially. It's like, oh, name, title, what do I put here? Kind of thing. It's also going to help confusion overall. It's kind of confusing to have one a title, one a name, one a title, back and forth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of those, and we're going to have a big section of Lovelace breaking changes, going over the editor and stuff like that, so that people will know all those breaking changes, and they'll definitely see them in their Lovelace config when they all come up. So that'll be a lot of yellow there. But once it gets over, Lovelace is default now, so I would expect less breaking changes. We have been there's been a lot of breaking changes over the last couple of releases, so that'll definitely slow down now that we've got all these all over with, just kind of pulled off the Band-Aid.
That's it. So what happens to the old UI? If I upgrade to 0.84 and I haven't used Lovelace, will Lovelace attempt to mimic my old user interface, the way I've set it up with group cards and all that, or is it going to be completely new?
So States is still going to be there. It'll still be a thing. It's just going to be toggled on and off, just kind of like Lovelace was before.
Right.
But it's going to take over, as if you're using States, then Lovelace will now be your default and it'll create it for you. It doesn't use groups anymore. It just uses, if you have lights, it's going to group every light into a card, because we don't need groups anymore, as we can just specify which entities you want in which card. So the groups file is kind of almost not necessary, as we have like groups in the config, and we have other ways to grouping into our Lovelace cards.
Right. Well, that makes sense.
Can we, from a views perspective, can we add, remove, edit all those from within the browser now? Is that the idea?
Yes, so now currently we have it so that you can edit views, you can delete views, and you can add views. You can add cards, you can edit anything about the card. Now, there's more iterations coming. You can't do everything yet, and not everything has its own UI. So let's say you go to the media card right now. We don't have a UI built for that yet. It's just a YAML editor. So any cards that don't already have that built out are just going to have the old YAML. You just have to put in the code for it. So you never actually have to touch your YAML file in a text editor because it's all going to be in the browser.
Right. Okay. So and this includes custom cards and stuff as well, right? When we're talking about editing and all that stuff?
It can. So the custom cards will all automatically have the YAML editor, and as soon as you get in there, you'll be able to edit the custom cards just as normal as if one of the cards doesn't have the UI. But we did make it available so that the custom cards can actually build out their own UI just as we did the core. So if you want to build out, a drop down and front end for it, you can do that within your own card, and it'll render just as the cores do.
Oh, that's okay. That's awesome.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I haven't used Lovelace before and I boot up to 0.84 and I'm presented with the new Lovelace UI, does that create the UI Lovelace YAML file that I can then just go in and edit?
No. So that's something I really wanted to talk about. Is we had a lot of discussion, and we've come to the point of, if you're going to use the UI editors at all, then we are going to store your Lovelace config in the .storage folder. So this means that you won't see it, or technically you can if you have access, but it's not going to be in the UI Lovelace file. So if we detect that you are using the UI-lovelace.yaml file, then we're not going to give you the option for the editor. This is for people who want to be able to still use their files and use includes and secrets and everything that they could beforehand. We're going to give you that option, and we have a lot of technical people that still want to do that, and this is kind of the best solution that we could give them. Is you lose the editor, but you get your includes and your secrets. Now, if you already have a UI Lovelace and you want to convert to the editor because you don't really care, we're going to make it so that you can import your current Lovelace file into the editor instance so that you can start using the editor, and then that Lovelace file will disappear.
Right. So it's basically, you're either using the UI Lovelace YAML file yourself to edit it, or you're doing everything online from the interface and editing it through there, which is then stored in the storage folder.
Yes, and we're still going over iterations and changing stuff. So anything that I do say today could change tomorrow, but this is kind of the direction that we're going.
Yeah.
It's to give the technical users the ability to still be technical.
Yeah, that's always a balancing act almost, right? It's you don't want to lose the technical users from a perspective of, hey, I can't do what I want to do even though I know how to do it, versus you don't want it too technical either, especially for new users and such. So
yeah, and that's kind of the balance we've been going back and forth with. We've had multiple discussions in the front end development Discord channel, and
yeah,
they've gone back and forth quite a lot. So we finally recently thought this could be the fix. We're gonna definitely do it this way. This makes it a lot easier on us too, and then we can show more for the user on the user interface. We can do a lot more, as we don't have to worry about those includes. We don't have to worry about the YAML file at all and them changing it within their files, and then we have to make sure and convert their changes and everything like that. So this just makes it a lot easier, makes it better for the people who want the editor, as we can show them a lot more things. We can show them errors just immediately without having to save it and then going through it on the back end and then sending it to the front end saying, okay, no, this was wrong, do it again. Stuff like that. It's going to make it a lot better for the technical people and the non-technical people, like you said. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic.
So I'll just give some quick facts while we're talking about Lovelace. Lovelace is named after Ada Lovelace, who is an 18th century mathematician and the first historically documented computer programmer. And Lovelace was launched in Home Assistant 0.72 back in June 2018. So that's really cool. So it's only been, 6 months since Lovelace was, the very first Lovelace was announced, and now we're ready to switch over and go prime time. So there's been a lot of work put into Lovelace.
Yeah, it's been basically a sprint since I got on.
Yeah.
So I don't remember. It's been a few months since I started, but whenever I did start, there was really no work being done on the front end for Lovelace. Like it was basically just it was just the desert there. So once I looked at it, I was like, man, this is really cool. And I started looking, and the first thing I did was I was looking at Thomas Lovin's custom cards, and he has a ton of them. So
yeah,
and I was like, oh, I want to make my own custom one. And I was like, they don't have a slider for images, or they don't like for even cards. So I was like, I want to make that. And so I made this custom card that you're able to put in cards, images, whatever you want, and then it can condense it into basically the size of one card. So you can have multiple entities cards within the space of one card. And that was the first thing that I did with anything Lovelace. And going back to that now, that is not the best thing I've ever done in my career, but it was definitely what got me jump started, and it got me, back in my JavaScript mindset. And then I started looking at the Discord, and I saw that there was a front end channel, and so I started looking, and I was like, wow, I can just contribute straight to Home Assistant. I'd never done anything open source before, so it was kind of like a foreign concept to me almost.
Yeah.
But I started there, and I made the gauge card, and Paulus he put me through the ringer on that card, as I was not very experienced at that point. But from then, I mean, Thomas Lovin got on board. We have Ian, who's on board, and then Bram recently has just the past month, man. Bram has gone. He's the reason that we have the real editor today. He's done the back end code and the front end code for a lot of it. So we kind of I started the editor a little bit, kind of gave a proof of concept, and then man, he blew it up. He went crazy, and that's the reason we have it so quickly, and we're able to do it before 1.0, really. So it's been a really fun ride with those guys, and everybody's doing tremendous work.
Yeah, it's just moved so quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it genuinely does feel like just, last week we were talking about Lovelace being, the next new thing, and we had I believe we had Paulus on and to talk about it, and
yeah,
here we are.
So yeah, it's time flies. That's right.
Yeah, Paul, his view on what we can do and what he wants to do is, man, it's gonna be awesome. Just the things that we have in the future and we have in our mind of what we want to do, it's really going to be something else. And I believe that Home Assistant is really going to be the new place to go for home control and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So also one of the best things about Lovelace is you don't have to reload the front end, or you don't have to reload the entire thing just to reload the front end, right? Just
exactly
refresh and it's boom.
Refreshed, and you see your changes immediately, which is really awesome. And with the UI editor, you hit save and it automatically does that refresh for you. And as soon as you go back to the screen, that change is already done. You already see that on your screen. And what is really awesome is you can actually see what you're doing as you do it. So if you change an entity in the UI editor, it automatically renders you a card that changes with that. So you get to see your changes in progress while you're editing.
Oh, that's going to save a lot of time.
That's cool. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Because I mean, I know I have done some YAML code and then go back. It's like, no, that's not what I want it to look like. Don't go back and forth. I mean, this makes it a lot easier to get a good-looking front end really quickly.
Yeah, for sure. So now that it's going to be default, is that it, or is there stuff coming, or what can we expect in the year coming forward?
And I think we're just going to be done. Honestly, I think we're just going to stop development. But we've kind of like stopped feature request while we were doing this. We wanted to make sure we had Lovelace at a good state, and then put the UI editor on top of that without changing anything. For this new year, we're going to start, feature requests back, adding new features, adding new cards, new Lovelace UI to make it look better. We've already had a lot of iterations of that, and I think we're going to be at a pretty good state once it goes live in 8.4, but there's always better. So that's a big thing, is making that a lot better, adding different options on cards. Now that we have the editor, we can do that a lot easier, because we can. It's easier to understand because we can put it in the code the way we want to.
Right.
Other enhancements are making it more mobile friendly. So like the horizontal and vertical stacks, it's not a really good way to organize your cards at the moment. It's a way and it works, but it is kind of difficult sometimes. So my plan there is to make that a lot more mobile friendly and able to move your cards around in the way that you would like to, and stuff like that. I think is going to be really cool.
That's going to be very tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of annoying right now, honestly. To get your 3, you have to do a horizontal stack and then 3 vertical stacks. You can do it, but for a user and using the editor UI, it might not be the easiest. Another big one is the import and export feature. We don't have a finalized idea on this, but what we thought is going to be pretty cool. It's so that you can still share your Lovelace UI if you have the editor. We're going to have it where you can export the actual YAML code so that you can put it on, let's say, your GitHub, or we're also thinking about having either a Lovelace store, like the Has.io add-on store, where you can import cards or import, different configs. So if, say, the picture elements, and you want to kind of copy that, we can pull that in without the entity IDs or anything like that, and then you can put in your own entities and kind of make it look like that, which I think is going to be really cool. It's not going to be in this next release, but future down the road, it's going to be really, really awesome. So importing and exporting that kind of stuff.
A lot of people love sharing Lovelace, like I see all the time. Here's my Lovelace UI on Reddit, or there'll be a retweet from someone that's done something cool in Lovelace, and everyone's like, "Oh, can you show me a YAML file to do that?" So having an export feature is probably going to be very important, I think, and an import as well.
Yeah, that's kind of what we wanted. We wanted to make sure that people could still do that, because not everybody is as good as designing the Lovelace as everybody else. Like, whenever I came in, that's what I did. I started looking at everybody else's and how I could make it look like that. And then I was like, well, I can just make more cards. Why don't I just make it so the way I wanted to? Sure. Yeah, I think it's a really good way to learn what you can do with Lovelace, and then make that your own, and importing it. To be able to do that, we're going to make it so you can import whole views, whole cards, whole everything config. You can basically import and export into GitHub, into whatever you want.
Nice.
Yeah, that's important too, right? And especially even from a backup perspective and such as well. So that'll be Sometimes people might want to back up just that one component or whatever. So that's great.
Yeah, it should be a pretty good feature. I think a lot of people are gonna enjoy that and appreciate it.
So, what are some of your favorite custom cards that you've seen others people create that you've like? Oh, I really like that.
The main one is the animated weather card. It is by far the best card I think that's out there. I mean, our current Lovelace weather card it gets the job done. It's there. It isn't animated or anything like that. So, but this is just pretty, and I think it's created by Arsabu. I probably butchered that, but he's a really cool guy in Discord. That is a tremendous card. I use it in my current config for my production stage. But that and the card modder, like, you're able to do any kind of style that you want on the card that you place inside that. Thomas Levin did a great job on that, and he's iterated a few times to keep on updating and going through our new TS conversions and lit HTML, stuff like that, make sure it works all the time. But other favorite cards are really anything that Thomas Levin does. If you look him up on GitHub, he has a ton. And they are all good. Every single thing that he puts out is useful. It is good. It's definitely good quality. I mean, like, he does a really good job.
We'll add some links in the show notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, his stuff is awesome.
Yeah.
What custom cards have you developed, if any? I think you mentioned earlier that you'd done a couple, but
All that I've done is the slider card that you could put in entities. Honestly, I've not looked at it, and since I started core development, there might be issues. I have no idea. I kind of just left that on the stage. Bram actually made a better one that's more like mobile friendly. So I just kind of like, it's basically deprecated at this point. But I have created like a ton of the other cards in the core. A lot of them are from different custom cards that I got the idea from and looked over to make sure that we could align them so that people could still use them. But like the button card, the gauge card, the alarm card, the thermostat card, the light card, I've all created with or without other GitHub repositories. The other custom cards have been made for that. Just kind of conform them to our core, and they don't have all the features, but they're easy to use. They do the job, and everybody can use them because they're not as complicated as the custom cards. Other than that, it's been getting this editor ban. I didn't really do much custom stuff before I went straight to core, which I definitely I really recommend. All these good developers are out there making custom cards, which is great, and you have a lot more freedom to make your own custom cards. But like, if you start adding to core, you can start adding it, and everybody sees that. Not everybody sees all these custom cards, and sometimes they're hard to find. Sometimes nobody knows about them until somebody finally shares their YAML, and it's like, oh, what is that? But like, if it's in Lovelace, it's always there, and it'll be in our add a card automatically. So like, once you click the plus button, it'll automatically, you'll have a view of that card. So everybody's going to start using your card. And like the media card, the simple media card that I think one of our developers who actually did put in the sensor card created, if he came forward and put that one into core, everybody would love that. And I think a lot of those developers out there could get their cards into core, maybe not with all the options, maybe not with that. It could definitely be converted.
I think one of my favorite ones that started off as a custom card and I think is now an official card is the alarm control panel card.
Yeah. That's the one that I think it was Cyticism or something like that. Cytolosm. I can't remember this guy's name. Man. But I looked at his card and I was like, yeah, I want that into the core because it's a very useful card. And we have it in the States as like the more info, but it's not a card. So I converted that one into core and from that guy, and he actually gave me his blessing after it was released. So like, good job. Like, we definitely needed that. So like a lot of those cards could definitely be converted into our core and made available to everybody.
That's cool. So let me ask you this now. So if there is, so let's say I make a card and I want that to roll out to the masses, for example, how is there first of all, is there a process that I can say, hey, can I bring this into the core, or is that like a unofficial, like, tap somebody on their shoulder and be like, hey, what do you think of this? I think other people might like it, kind of thing.
Yeah, a lot of people, they'll make a custom card just to test the waters. Like, I know, I think Thomas put out his long press as a card before he converted it into core, which is completely fine and great. But I mean, just start a PR. There's tons of examples now with lit HTML, which is our new, a lot better way to making our front end. And there's just there's a lot of support within our dev channel. If you want to put it into the dev channel of our Discord, the Home Assistant Discord, then we can discuss it, see if it's a good idea, see what features to bring with that card. Or you can put it into Lovelace Discord, see what you get there, or go ahead and make the card into a custom card, see how people like it, put it into Reddit, put it into the forums, put it into the Discord, show everybody the card, see what they think of it, iterate on it, and then put it into core. We will work with you to help you put it into what needs to be done to put it into core. And we have definitely a lot of examples and a lot of people now that can help with that conversion.
Yeah, that's really cool.
That's amazing. Cool.
that's all we really had for you. Is there anything else you want to mention?
I just kind of wanted to give a shout out to all the people that kind of helped work on this. I mean, whenever I started, it was, Paulus really doing everything. Thomas jumped on board. Me and Thomas kind of jumped on board at the same time. Ian jumped on board. Bram jumped on board. We've had a few other people do some stuff, but it's kind of like we all work together to get this done. We've done it really quickly, and I think that with all these discussions that we've had, we've kind of really gotten a good viewpoint of what we want Lovelace to be, where it is now, and everything like that. And it's kind of awesome to see everybody come together and create this awesome thing that we have.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think, you guys it's very risky to change a user interface because this is going to affect, all users of Home Assistant. And I think everyone's taken the time to do it properly, make sure it's, you're actually getting an improvement when you do this. Yeah, so I think all you guys have done an amazing work, and yeah, congratulations to everyone involved.
Yeah, huge shout out to the entire team. So thank you guys, and thank you as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fun. Everybody does it out of fun. Nobody on the front end other than Paulus is really getting paid from it. So it's all we love doing this stuff, and it's just everybody came together and put it together. And not everybody's going to love all the changes immediately, but it will, as you said, everybody. It is a good thing that we did these changes, and people maybe not see that, but overall, it's going to be great.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, Zack. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and congratulations once again on the Lovelace release. I'm sure you're going to have a happy holidays knowing that it's finally out there and people are enjoying it.
Yeah, I'll definitely drink to that one. Yeah, guys. Thank you for having me on. I love talking about Lovelace. So it has been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, thanks for jumping on.
All right, cheers, guys. Special thanks to our guest this week, Zack Arnett. If you want to share your Home Assistant journey or come on as a guest, reach out to us at feedback@hasspodcast.io. That's HASS podcast.io.
The Home Assistant podcast is hosted by Phil Hawthorne and myself, Rohan Karamandi. For links to topics that we discussed today, check out our show notes on hasspodcast.io.